Oh, what's good, my man of society? It is your host with the most, Shadow Look, back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. That is how you help my channel get into the algorithm. Highly appreciate you going to do that. Now, what I wanted to discuss was a video I had seen done by Nino America, right? It was a short that popped out of my algorithm, right? Where he's talking about how he's fed up and tired of, the whole illegal thing and immigrants and, now everyone's bitching and whining and complaining about ICE and yada yada yada, right? And he had mentioned several things, that I wanted to discuss. One is assuming that all these individuals are criminals when they're not all criminals. That they're arresting and detaining. Some haven't even never committed a crime, and we know this to be facts. As a matter of fact, even they themselves, meaning Homeland Security, has stated that yes, some of them don't have criminal records, but they still came here illegally, like came into this country illegally, right? We're talking about like working individuals, not murderers, not drug dealers, not criminals. Like he tries to make it seem like all of these individuals are, bad people and coming with their I guess their third world country way of looking at stuff, right? With their negativities, assuming, right? Assuming and judging people, speculating that these individuals are, witchcraft and voodoo when you don't know that to be facts. But you're going to go ahead and assume, right? And it's not good to judge people on assumptions, right? Or stereotyping. You know what I mean? And as a matter of fact, several people have been detained, right? Who turned out to be American citizens, right? And Homeland Security, ICE, they just assumed that they were illegals and detained them, right? And then they ended up releasing them after, a headache and all this process and bullshit that people have to go through just because they were profiling, discriminating, violating their rights. It's kind of like if they were to do that to you, right? Because you don't fit the the typical look of what they consider to be American, right? So it's like if they were to do it to you, you would be offended and outraged by it, right? So now you could understand these individuals and how they feel, you know, when they're, this is happening to them. And not only that, but people don't even know because these people don't identify themselves, right? Um, and, people can be like, well, how do you know they're not criminals? Well, how do you know that they are criminals? It's like the same argument could be used, right? That's why people are not supposed to racially profile. You know what I mean? That's why it's not good to do that. Now, you had said that you wouldn't, you're not going to be defending no criminals, and you wouldn't defend no criminals, and you know, um, you wouldn't be, backing up criminals. But Donald Trump broke the law. Donald Trump, has a record. You know what I mean? Donald Trump did break the law. So, and you supported him, right? Somebody who broke the law. You said you wouldn't support no one who broke the law, but he just broke the law. Even if people say, well, it was no big deal or it was just this and that, nonetheless, he was found guilty and he broke the law. So you supported someone who broke the law. But it's like at the convenience, people, pick and choose what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You know what I mean? And I'm not a Democrat or a liberal or, none of that, right? To be like, oh, I'm for the Biden because I didn't even like Biden and his administration either, right? And I'm not a fan of, Gavin Newsom and none of these individuals, right? Mayor Best is all right. But as for like the political thing, I just, call it for how I see it, right? And now you can't be upset and or like baffled of why these individuals are proudful of their heritage. People are going to be proud of where their roots are at. That doesn't mean that they don't love America or they don't like America, right? You can love America and also be proud of your roots, right? When you were saying about how could people wave, two different flags, just because you're waving the Mexican flag doesn't mean that you don't love America, right? But you're proudful in your roots. You have pride in where you come from, your roots. So it doesn't necessarily now mean that you don't love America, right? Or you're hating America, or you're because if that's the case, they should go back to their country. Like nobody's saying that people dislike America and everything like that. Now, when you hear people complaining, it's because of the injustice that's happening, the discrimination, right? That's being handed to these individuals. Um, and the thing is that America is great, right? It's the land of the free. You have a lot of freedoms that you wouldn't have in any other country. But just because America is, great in that, it doesn't mean that it can't be improved, or that nothing bad is happening, right? And that people should be grateful about the rights that they do have. It's kind of like saying if you were to live in a country where women get raped but they don't get murdered, and then you tell them, oh, don't complain about it, at least you're not getting murdered. In another country, women get murdered, so right here you're just getting raped, so it's not that bad. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, how about they shouldn't get raped or murdered? You know what I mean? Like, you can always improve in things. Just because, one is not as bad as the other doesn't mean that it can improve, or there's no room for improvement, right? Or that everything's a-okay. You know what I mean? And I get where you're coming from about how, you're proud to be American, right? And people take shots at you for that, right? Because you were saying that, some people say that you look more Mexican than others, right? And I do get that. There is a lot of people who don't know how to voice their opinions on their sides. And there is ignorance on both sides. You know what I mean? So I understand that. But one thing that tends to happen is that a lot of people grab their interactions with Hispanics and then they try to apply it to the whole entire ethnicity, right? Because this problem is not just a problem that's targeting Hispanics or Mexicans, right? But yet you're making it a Mexican issue. Like, I'm tired of these, Pedros and these Mexicans, but this is an immigration problem, but you're focusing all your energy and negativity on the Mexicans for some strange reason, right? I don't know, why that is, right? If this is not just a Mexican American problem, right? But it's a immigration problem, right? But like I said, you are going to have ignorant people on this side, right? But that doesn't reflect on the teachings of all Mexicans, or all Mexicans are like that, or all Mexicans are negative, or all Mexicans, you get when it's kind of like, there's a lot of serial killers who are white, right? A lot of mass shooters were American, white individuals. Does that mean all white people are negative and shooters and everything? No, it doesn't, right? There's some white folks that are racist. Does that mean all white folks are racist? No, it doesn't, right? Meaning Americans, right? So just because there is some Americans who are negative and who are, racist, and who are, coming, with a bunch of prejudice, doesn't mean that now I'm going to be like, oh, all these Americans are like that, or all Americans like that. Like, no, you know what I mean? That would be reckless for me to come and say. It would just be, just some isolated individuals with just, this individual here or there, you know what I mean? But doesn't reflect in behalf of the whole entire group. So it's never good to do that, to try to brand the whole entire group a certain way just because of your interactions or what you have seen about these individuals, right? Because these people don't speak in behalf or show all of, the raza's behaviors. You get what I mean? Like when it comes to the, negativity, right? So I can understand, the frustration, and I can understand you being prideful in, being American and being born here, right? Same with these individuals, right? They're prideful in where their roots are at, right? But that doesn't mean that they don't love America, right? Because this is where they were born and where they live, and the reason why they chose to come over here. Now, I agree, people should come here the legal way, right? And you just can't have open borders. I completely understand all of that, right? Because you would fuck your economy up. This is very true, right? But the way they're going about it is not the right way. Here, trip out on this. Obama deported more people than any president ever. You can look it up. Why I don't have a reason to lie. Look it up. He deported more than any president, more than Donald Trump's not even close to reaching the number of deported that Obama did. But you never heard about it. It never made the news, right? And cell phones exist back then, right? They were around back then. People were still, recording shit back then, right? So how come you want to see a bunch of videos being uploaded and everything? Because Obama did it the right way. He went about it the right way. Not just, any random people that you see on the street and just assume, right? And without even identifying yourself, without even providing any type of documents and paperwork, right? That is a reckless way of, going about the matters, right? Because people don't know who you are, or they're just trying to kidnap you. And people are saying, well, don't they see their vest? Their vest says ICE or whatever. Like I said, hey, in normal street clothes, anybody could strap on a vest and it say ICE or whatever, right? But you don't know if they're not identifying themselves. You get what I mean? When they're just running up to these individuals. I don't know if it's just to catch them by surprise or what it is, right? Why they're going about it. But the way they're going about it is why it's a big deal. It's why it's why you see it all over the news, and why people are, blowing it up as much as they did. Because like I said, Obama deported more people, but you didn't see a fiasco like this right? Because he didn't go about it like how Donald Trump is going about it, the illegal way, right? Because it's violating people's rights. You know what I mean? Hey, and that's not a political. It's not political rhetoric, right? Because, like I said, this is factual. People can go and look it up, right? You know, hey, like I said, people just got to bring the proof, but we just can't go based off of what people say, right? Like we got to bring the actual proof. Um, so I think people just let their emotions get the best of them, right? Like how they personally feel about a matter, right? And then want to go about it the illegal way, right? Like violating people's rights and breaking the Constitution, right? When people were saying that we should uphold the Constitution, but yet at their convenience they want to break it, right? When that's not how society works. That's not how America works. You know what I mean? It's one of the reasons why America's great. But people want to now start to change the Constitution and change the way people do things, right? And it's like, well, you're saying to uphold the Constitution and that the country's, a great country because of these reasons, right? But these are the very reasons you're breaking now. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, you're proud to be American, right? But if we're talking about if you're if people are saying that people should just go back to where they come from, like let's say your ancestries, right? Like your grandfather or grandmother, let's say if they came from a different country, then you wouldn't be American, right? Because you don't fit the typical American, what these people consider at least to be a true American, right? Um, because of our brown skin. You know what I mean? And even though, like I said, we're proud to be American, right? But these individuals don't see us that way. Even those who are Trump supporters and MAGAs. You get what I mean? This country was built off of immigrants, bro, because it's true. There's no such thing as an American. Where were our founding fathers from? They weren't Americans. You know what I mean? They were Europeans. And now people could say, why is there so many people here that speak Spanish? Or why is, the culture, their culture, so rooted here in America? Well, bro, this used to be Mexico, bro. So you're going to have roots of family and generations that, were Mexican that were already here when it became America, right? So it's like taking over Mexico and then wondering why there's so many Mexicans, right? Or if Asians came to America and conquered it, right, and took it over, and then wonder why there's so many Americans and why people are speaking English. Well, bro, it's rooted as America. You get what I mean? So that's the reason why you see a lot of that here, because like I said, the culture was already rooted in the land, that it used to be. You know what I'm saying? But overall, that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments. Shut up. We are.